Hi again then guys, and welcome to yet another pick out of my top 50 countdown, and this is a vehicle which I don't think too many people who have been around on the channel for a while will be surprised by, but it's not necessarily one which you would have probably assumed would be this high. But this car is a vehicle which I love seeing it every time I can. Unfortunately though, that's not that often, because there aren't many games which feature the car in question. It's a Cadillac, which means that I immediately have a level of love for it, because I'm a huge Cadillac fan, and it's pretty much the ultimate Cadillac, because although the Cien is an awesome supercar concept, this one's just on a whole different level. Because one of the great things about the Cadillac 16 is that it speaks to what Cadillac is, but also was. The Cadillac Cien is very much so a 21st century Cadillac. It's new school money, it's motorsport, it's supercars, it's F1, it's Le Mans, it's that side of the equation. Whereas the 16 is 1930s gangster, it's 1950s class, it's 1970s luxury. It's an old school Cadillac, but it happens to have modern tech, and I love that. It manages to perfectly blend being this obscenely elegant machine, which is a contradiction in terms, but somehow the car manages to pull it off. It's a car which should offend everyone who looks at it, but somehow it's gorgeous to look at. It's not offensive at all. You could park it next to a Hummer. People would hate the Hummer, love this thing, even though technically this should be a more offensive looking car. And it's got an incredible engine. That 13.6 litre, 1,000 horsepower V16, which you can turn cylinders off to save fuel, super smooth, effortless torque, effortless power. And although I'm not exactly sure how quick the car could have been, probably not many people are sure about something like that because it probably wasn't even tested, but fast is a word that comes to mind, and it probably was quite quick. I mean, with 1,000 horsepower, it would be difficult for it to be slow. Now, on the games that do feature it, that is something which is always in common. It's always a quick car. Project Gotham have featured it. Test Drive Unlimited had it as DLC. But that's about it. And it's a shame, I think, that others don't. I'm surprised that Forza has never had this car. It does seem very much so like the kind of car that would have been on, say, Forza 2, for instance, because they had stuff like the Seat Cupra GT and the Chrysler ME412. Gran Turismo, of course, had the Cadillac Cien, which is literally the brother of this car. How much closer can you get? And yet neither of those massive franchises have featured it. And that's such a shame, because it's a cool car. To me, the 16 goes way beyond something like the ostentatiousness of a Maybach or the class of a Rolls-Royce or the performance of a Bentley, and somehow, and this is the cool thing, it manages to almost put those three together. It's as ridiculous as a Maybach, it's as luxurious and classy as a Rolls-Royce, and it's as performance and power-oriented and motorsport-linked as a Bentley. It almost has those three different ideals blended seamlessly into one luxury concept car. Now, spoiler alert, this is the highest concept car to be in my top 50 list, and there's a reason for that. The Cadillac 16 is, with no hesitation whatsoever, and has been the case for some years now, in fact, probably over a decade, my favourite concept car of all time. Hands down. Nothing else even comes close. I'm a fan of tons of supercar concepts. The Nardos, the Honaudiers, the Peugeot 907s, the Chirons, various others are awesome, for sure. Through the decades even. But none of them come close for me to the Cadillac 16. It's one of the only model cars that I don't own, which I want. And the reason why is because I have to get it from the States, and they cost so much. And I don't want to be spending that kind of money unless I absolutely have to. Now, eventually I might, but it's just that kind of car. And I'm sure you guys have those kind of cars for you. It's a vehicle which, it's not necessarily your absolute favourite, but it's one which you always love to see. And for many of you guys, I believe there is something which I can say in a vehicle which I can compare it to that will allow you to understand the way I feel. If you don't, that is. And that is the Chrysler ME412. There are so many people who can understand what I mean by thinking about that car. It's a vehicle which has this strangely endearing and appealing quality to it where you're just immediately happy to see it in a game. Be it Forza 2, Test Drive Unlimited, Midnight Club of all places, whatever the case may be. It's a car that puts a smile on your face. For me, others that fall into that category are stuff like the Adonis or a Mosler. You just don't see them on enough games, and when you do, it's so cool. It's just one of those ultimate unicorn cars which doesn't need to be the best at anything, it's just a car that you love. To me, that's exactly what this one is. I can't remember when I was first introduced to it. I think it may have even been when I bought a Hot Wheels car or something as a kid that I first saw it. Loved the shape, but it wasn't until I started using it on Test Drive Unlimited as a DLC car that I truly realised really how much I loved the car. And for me, it's never changed. It's my favourite luxury car of this type of all time. Luxury modern limos, that is. Easily my favourite concept. And it's a car which has numbers that could terrify any supercar, wrapped in a body that could terrify any luxury car. Cadillac should have made this vehicle. Would it have sold well? Probably not. Even if they'd have made them to order with a price tag of $1 million each, it would have still been a good idea, because this, in a weird kind of way, could have been Cadillac's Veyron. Because the Veyron is not a good business decision. From a monetary point of view, Volkswagen loses money on every single Veyron that they made. Probably on the Chiron as well, even though it's more expensive. But that's not the point. They did it because they could, because it's a statement, and because overall it helps people's image of the brand. Likewise for Cadillac, this could have been in a weird kind of way their Veyron, that ultimate vehicle to draw incredible levels of attention to the brand, to make people think, well, if I can't get that one, maybe I'll buy a CTS-V instead. Maybe I'll buy an ATS. Maybe I'll buy an Escalade. You know, the kind of people who actually have the money to buy a car, not just kids playing on a game. Because at the end of the day, games are great, but it's the adults who are actually going to go and buy those cars that make the sales. And adults, especially people who buy Cadillacs, which is generally retiree age or older age with a good job, good income, they love that kind of luxury. That's why they like Cadillac. This is the peak of that. I think it's a real shame that they didn't produce it. Kind of understandable. But this and the Cien could have been an awesome 1-2 punch. It could have immediately put Cadillac at the top of the luxury world and pretty high in the supercar world as well, given that I personally consider the Cien to be America's answer to the Zonda. But overall, I love the 16. It definitely and will always have a place in my favourites list. Not necessarily top 10, but for sure top 20, and that will pretty much never change. And that's it for this pick. A car that I love. I know a lot of you guys have a lot of love for it as well. Not necessarily quite as much love in most cases as I have, but for some of you, you'll probably get it. And that's it for this pick. So, of course, I'll see you guys next time. You can click through at the end to see all of the other episodes in this series. And for now, as always, thanks for watching.